Hi, my name is Ranger Jackson, and welcome to the national park that doesn't exist. That's what I greet all of my tour guests with, though technically it isn't true. I work as the only tour guide at the aptly named Forest National Park, though we usually just call it the Forest. And it does exist. In fact, if you've ever been near the western half of Canada, you've visited the park, and probably even met me. But the moment you left, poof, memory gone. Why? Well, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. But it just has that effect. Outside of the park, no one except the government knows about it. Yet it has this draw that brings in thousands of tourists every year. In order to keep those tourists from getting lost, they need a small group of people to live here full time to keep things in check. I'm one of those full-timers, and have been for a little over a decade now. We just got the internet here about a month ago, and I've been trying to figure it out in my spare time. Well, got the internet. We've been asking for it for years, but our manager, Julie, is a stickler and only gives us absolute necessities. Once a month, Julie walks out to the edge of the park and speaks to someone on the outside with a two-way radio. Then, a week later, in come the government guys with a truck full of provisions. We've tried asking them for stuff, but since the transient government guys don't remember we exist, much less our requests, it's a futile effort. Luckily, some hippie with a weird satellite dish on his van showed up. He hasn't returned to his van since then, so I figured he wouldn't mind if I borrowed his stuff while he wasn't using it. Lots of people on here have fun, scary stories. So, I thought I'd share a few of my own from my time here. I guess to start, I should probably explain what exactly Forest National Park is. Forest National Park is 50,265 acres big, but that only encompasses the memory effects part. The forest proper is a circular, 5-mile diameter section that gets deeper the further you go into it. Literally deeper, as in the trees get taller, thicker, and block out more of the sun the further you go. We keep the edges cleared so we don't accidentally wander into that part. Whenever one of us goes past that point, we call it a dive, and it's something I do daily. We don't measure distance traveled in there by miles or kilometers, but rather by the illuminance, or lux, of wherever you are. Actual distance gets a little bit wonky inside the forest. You can walk for hours and leave only feet from where you entered, or for minutes and be miles and miles away from home. We refer to our depth in the forest by the oceanic zones: sunlight, twilight, midnight, abyssal, and hadal. As you can imagine, traversing within the zones gets more dangerous the deeper you get, mostly because of the wildlife. We're kind of like Yellowstone in that way. The only things that are considered to be safe zones in there are streams which run through all the zones because, for whatever reason, distance is exact, and the forest is a little calmer around them. Okay, story time. I usually do my tours down the East Stream, because it's the easiest to traverse. But sometimes I'll have a particularly advanced group of hikers who I feel can take on the challenge of the North Stream. Last time I did, it was about a year and a half ago. A group showed up in a whole caravan of cars, dressed up to the nines in fancy hiking gear. I felt, frankly, underdressed in my green fleece ranger uniform and Stetson hat. They were very lively and enthusiastic, brimming with questions as I ran them through what the park was and what they were going to see. I tried showing them the well-trodden East Stream Trail, but I guess I went a little bit overboard on my showboating while explaining everything, because I was immediately met with looks of disappointment. Now, I've never been one to let a good tour group down, so I said, "All right, I don't usually do this, but since you all look far more experienced than most tour groups I get out here, we're going to go to the North Stream entrance instead." This got them excited again, and we headed around the perimeter towards the North Stream. The reason I don't usually take tours down it is for two reasons. First, it's much further away from the visitor center, and I am just a little bit lazy. And second, it's a thinner, steeper stream that's much more rocky than the east. It not only increases the chances of people twisting or breaking things, but at certain points, there are especially steep areas that require alternate routes that go away from the stream and into the forest. Even though the detours don't leave the sight line of the stream, going any distance into the tree line on either side is risky, even in the brighter zones. Everything was fine for most of the hike. In fact, I was having a lot of fun with this tour group. They were telling me stories from the hiking trip they were on in the Canadian Rockies. They had left out of Vancouver earlier that week, and were stopping at every major hiking destination they could on their way to Alaska. One of the members of their group was someone they had met on one of their hikes, and had decided to join their caravan. He was a scrawny kid, couldn't have been barely out of his parents' house, and he was quiet to the point of near invisibility. He stayed towards the back of the group, and only spoke when spoken to. Since I wasn't used to going down the North Stream, and by the consequence didn't have natural waypoints guiding me, we went much deeper than I usually take tour groups. I was having too much fun to notice how dark it had gotten. We were approaching another small waterfall that would require taking a detour around a tree with the trunk the width of a school bus when the kid spoke up. "Hey, can we, turn around?" He was jittering nervously and wore an expression of apprehension. I wasn't sure just how deep we were, so I told everyone to turn off their flashlights for a moment, and I pulled out my lux meter. It read 0.062 lux. We were deep in the twilight zone of the forest. A whole 3 lux, or about a mile, deeper than I usually take people. Sorry guys, we have to turn around. You all got a longer tour than those tickets were worth," I told them. The group put up some light resistance, but followed along behind me obediently. The kid no longer walked at the back, but instead right behind me. Even though we were making our way back, he seemed to be getting more scared, making whimpering noises at intervals. The forest has some weird effects on people's psyche, and it was clearly targeting him. I've had plenty of people on my tours get scared, break down crying, hallucinate, even try climbing up trees to get out of the forest, so I knew this kid was on the verge of snapping. As we approached another waterfall that would require a detour into the forest, I stopped and turned to the kid to try to calm him. Just as I opened my mouth, The sound of cracking wood rang from the forest behind us. In what seemed like the same instant, the kid shoved me to the side, sending me sprawling into the creek. A couple of folks ran to me and helped me out of the creek. I wasn't able to see him run into the woods in time, but I was able to stop the people who had chased after him. Once everyone was in order, we stood in silence for a long minute, listening for the kid or whatever had made that noise. Eventually, I said, barely above a whisper, "Follow me as quietly as possible. Stay calm and don't stray off of my path." A woman in the group spoke up, pointing out into the forest. "What about him?" "My main goal right now is to get all of you out safely. He's probably just ahead of us." So, we walked around the falls and back to the stream, the sound of our boots crunching over detritus almost deafening over the utter silence of the forest. "Hey!" I whipped around and saw everyone looking into the forest. There was the kid, standing just at the edge of what our flashlights could reach. The man who had yelled was waving his arms in the air and shouting at him. "Hey! Over here!" "Stop! Hey, stop!" I spoke above him. He turned to me, indignant. "Why? He's right there." "He heard you. He can follow us if he wants. I told you to stay quiet and follow me." Fortunately, he seemed to understand the gravity of my words and shut up. As we walked, the kid seemed to be following us, gradually moving closer to us as we walked. A couple minutes later, a woman in the group gasped and pointed at him. I've seen a lot in my time working here. Not much really gets to me anymore. But my blood ran cold when I saw what made her gasp. The kid was much closer than before, but he wasn't walking with us. Rather, his legs dangled, feet dragging along the ground. I heard stifled sobs of fear behind me and picked up the pace. All at once, I became aware of a noise emanating from the kid. It was less of a sound and more of a feeling, a pounding in my chest, like a bass drum at a rock concert, the footfalls of something massive. I turned again to find the kid less than 20 yards away. His face revealed nothing, a look of utter neutrality. But just below it, his neck was distended grotesquely, as a spear the diameter of a forearm and black as midnight protruded from it. It was impossible to see where it went, or what it was attached to, only that it was there by the way blood bubbled from the seam. Shortly after, he turned and lifted off the ground, disappearing into the darkness above us. The rest of the hike was calm, besides a few members of the tour group openly crying. When we resurfaced, I didn't even have a chance to get a word out before they broke into a sprint, piling into their respective cars and tearing out of the lot. While I don't know, I can guess what happened to them after that. They left the park boundary and forgot. They probably think that that kid chickened out and left their caravan, completely unaware of his fate. I wish I was so lucky. The kid's car is still in the parking lot. There's a lot of cars in our parking lot at any given time. It makes us look much more busy than we actually are. I asked one of the government guys once why they don't just take them, and he said something about, waiting until it doesn't look suspicious. I guess that makes sense, though I don't know why it's an issue if no one knows this place exists. It's not my choice either way. I have to get back to work. I see a car pulling in now, and I think Julie would get mad if she caught me loitering around this van. I have a lot more stories, and I hope I can share some more of them here before the government guys take this van. So, until next time.